time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Welcome to the Property Podcast. It's episode 28 and you are listening to the UK's favourite business podcast. I'll explain what I mean shortly, but before that, Rob, how are you? Are you there?
I am here in Liverpool this week in a bit of an echo chamber. Hope you can still hear me okay. I'm here. I'm excited about this episode because it's a topic that's very close to both of our hearts. We're talking about how to invest at a distance and why we think you should do it. We've also got a news story that vindicates something we've talked about before and another resource of the week for you at the end, of course.
We're back to front, Rob. How are you in Liverpool and I'm down here in London?
Don't know what's going on. Something's gone wrong here.
We're a bit mixed up, but let's hope the podcast is on track. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Rob, we are now the UK's favourite business podcast. We have more 5-star reviews than any other business podcast in the whole of the UK, which is incredible because we're only 6 months in.
In your face, Radio 4. You've had like 5 years to get these reviews and we've just done it in 6 months.
Thank you so much to everyone who's contributed. It really means a lot to us. We keep saying it every week there's a new record broke or something big's happened. And all we can say is thank you. We'll keep going because your reviews really motivate us. So thank you so much to everyone who's contributed so far, to everyone who's going to leave us a review in the near future, and to the following. Thank you to Noah. Noah says, informative and entertaining. This is the only podcast on property worth listening to. Rob and Rob cut out the unnecessary jargon and dispense their key learnings in an unbiased manner. Richard says, my review, The Broken Record. I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Fun, factual, insightful, and educational. The guys truly are ingenious in presenting a content in an easy to listen and understand way. I'm a new property investor and a budding entrepreneur that's taken control of my life in the last year. And this is one of the 2 podcasts I've been downloading all the episodes of and revisiting time and time again. Guys, please keep the lessons coming. From Richard. Thank you very much. And finally, CG says, catching up. Hi, Rob and Rob. I've truly enjoyed listening to your podcast and Property Geek podcast as well. I'm only subscribed a week ago, and now I'm doing my very best to catch up with all the previous episodes. I'm a beginner and find your podcasts very informative and inspiring. Best of luck and keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Nothing makes me happier than hearing that people are enjoying what we're doing and that we're making a difference and people are getting further because of it. And speaking of which, even better, Rob, I believe you've got some voicemails for us as well.
We have. Shall we play them?
Let's do it.
Hi, Rob and Rob. My name is Ben, and I just wanted to leave you a voice message as you've been asking for them. And just to say thank you so much to you both for such a brilliant podcast. I've just completed on my first place, and which is a huge amount down to you and your advice. I'd have been suffering from analysis paralysis, I think, for at least another year if it wasn't for you guys. So thanks for the confidence and motivation and really for giving me the knowledge that I felt that I needed to really go for it. So much appreciated. And now looking for the next purchase, and so I can start calling it a portfolio maybe. So anyway, thanks a lot and keep up the brilliant work. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, just like to say, massive fan of the podcast. I'm a total beginner to property investment, but it has helped me masses to sort of improve my knowledge first off, and I've just set myself a smart target, which you'll be pleased to know, and today I'm going to sit and plan how I'm going to reach that smart target. So I thought I'd let you know via one of the voice messages because I know how you like it when we do this. So this one's for you, and thanks very much and keep up the good work.
Wow, thank you guys. Well, first of all, thank you for being amongst the first people to leave us a recording. We've been begging for weeks and then suddenly 2 come along at once. So Tom, thank you for your kind words and support. It's very appreciated. And Ben, your first investment. That's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And it's great to hear that we made a difference. Analysis paralysis is a very real and dangerous thing. And the fact that you overcome that and sort of got off the mark, and hopefully there's far more to come for you. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck on building that portfolio.
Moving on, what have you been up to this week, Rob?
Well, it's been a week of father-in-laws for me, Rob. And it's not because of my upcoming wedding. No, actually, I've not been only dealing with my own father-in-law, but yours as well. So last week, my father-in-law did his first investment through myself and RMP Property. Now, you may think that's normal because we do lots of investments, but think about it. Doing your own investments is one thing, but the pressure of the father-in-law being involved is pretty nerve-wracking. So
that's one hell of a responsibility and a real vote of confidence as well.
It is. And another vote of confidence is you've sent your father-in-law over to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was asking me all these questions about property. He just read my book on holiday and got all excited about it. And he was asking me all these questions. It's like, you know what? Rob Bence does this for a living. Go and bother him instead. So that's what he's doing, and hopefully that goes well.
Yeah, so I'm meeting him this evening. So looking forward to that. And talking about your property book, actually, Tom, who left us a voicemail, he tweeted us this week saying he's got the book. I'm very excited to be reading that too. So hope you're enjoying it, Tom. Okay, and what have you been up to, Rob?
Well, I've been practicing what I preach this week. So I've been interviewing some letting agents. I've got a property that I'm going to need a letting agent for in the next couple of months. So way back in episode number 5, we talked about how to choosing letting agent. So I've started that process. I just sort of went and walked down the high street and popped into the branches of 4 different agents because I wanted to talk to all of them and sort of see what they all had to say in terms of the kind of rent it could achieve and the kind of tenant, the demand that there was, and sort of see if all their stories were the same or wildly different. And even just going into 4 different places, it was really interesting. There was such a variety of ways in which I was greeted. There were some who couldn't be more helpful and seemed really enthusiastic and took my details, and others who just kind of seemed like they couldn't get me out of there fast enough. So it's a really interesting part of the mystery shopping process. And so the next stage of that is going to be this week calling them all up as a tenant and seeing if what they tell me as a tenant match what they told me as a landlord. So just thought it was an interesting example of putting our process into action.
You're obviously running through what we covered in episode 5, how to choose a letting agent.
Exactly. And so we're going to link to that in the show notes. And so if you're going to coming up to needing to do that, like Ben, who's making his first investment, maybe he's going to be in need of an agent, you can follow that process as well.
So let's look at the news this week. And if you listen to Property News Radio, you heard me cover this one last week. But I wanted to bring it up again because I wanted to get Rob involved because we feel a little vindicated. Because the majority of our portfolios are flats, apartments. So we do mix, but the majority are flats and apartments. And often, they get bad press and people say, oh, I wouldn't do that. But it appears we were right, Rob, to do so.
Flats have increased more than any other property over the last decade. That is the news, taken from the Daily Mail, of course. They've risen by 35% since 2003. According to the Halifax. And in London, the average price of a flat is now $286,000, which is unbelievable, really, isn't it? But yeah, they've risen faster than anywhere else. And the fastest of all is in Scotland. Flats in Scotland have risen by 57% since 2003. And I know someone who's made a killing on flats in Scotland, so I know that's true. It just goes to show that there are obviously very good reasons why that's happened. And it shows that you shouldn't just go and dismiss an entire type of property because of some kind of preconceived ideas of what arguments are there against flats? What do people come out with normally?
You know what, Rob? I think we should do a podcast on it. The reasons why people say they don't invest and, what you can do to minimize the risk, or is it just a complete myth altogether? So listen out, listeners. We'll do an episode on that in a few weeks. I think it'll be really interesting. I think what's also interesting is the rises of 35% to 57% might not sound like a huge rise, but you have to remember, we've had one of the biggest property crashes in history in that time as well. So that's quite impressive. That's quite impressive considering half of that time property was really plummeting in price. And in particular, people were saying flats were hit hardest. So interesting that the perceived ideas and the actual data are very different. Very, very different.
I like that as an idea for an episode. So let's shut up about it now and save some for a full episode. That should be a good one.
What have we got coming up this week, Rob?
So this week, we've got a topic that was suggested to us by someone at the meetup we had a few weeks back who wanted to hear more about how to invest at a distance. I think that's understandable why he wanted to hear more about it, because a lot of people start out by thinking about investing close to home, which makes sense. And when you look at all the conventional wisdom online, the majority of people are telling you to keep it local and sort of scaring you about all the dangers of going far away and the things that might go wrong. So we're going to try and redress the balance a little bit in this episode. We're going to talk about why you might want to invest away from where you live, what the challenges in doing that are, and how we think you can overcome those challenges. So make you realize that if it is something you want to do, there's no problem that's insurmountable. So that's what we're going to be talking about, how to invest at a distance and why you should do it. But let's flip that and start with the why, shall we?
Nearly every investor I work with ends up doing this. They end up investing away from home. Now, it's not something they may come to me and say they want to do straight away. But when you start talking about the benefits, they soon come round to it. Some of the benefits are very obvious. First of all, the potential of better returns. If you're very restricted to say, I will only invest in this area, then you will only ever get the returns that area offer. But if you were to expand your radar by, 50 miles, 100 miles, or unlimited, you'll invest anywhere in the country, then you're open to whatever returns across the country set out. For example, if you live in London, you might be enjoying 4-5% returns. But if you were to venture further north, you could double that. But if you're saying, I'll only ever invest in London, then you're restricting yourself to potential returns elsewhere. That's the first benefit. The second is better growth potential. You may live in an area that's quite rural. The fundamentals of investment might not be there. Maybe a lovely place to live, but is it a great place to invest? So investing elsewhere might not only give you a better return, but also better capital growth potential as well. And another reason is it may require less money for you to invest. Again, if you live in London or surrounding areas, if you're looking to invest, you need to save quite a substantial deposit before you can get going. But if you decide to look elsewhere, a little further north, for example, you may need a lot less to actually start building your portfolio. And I think it's fair to say that it's better to start a portfolio than not at all. The sooner you get started, the sooner you start to reap the rewards. There are several reasons, but of course, Rob, that's all great, but there are, of course, some challenges involved.
Those are very good reasons in favour of doing it. So why do a lot of people shy away from it? Well, the first challenge, I suppose, is the thing that always comes up. So what if something goes wrong? What if there's a leak? What if something happens and you're hundreds of miles away and there's nothing you can do about it? That's a challenge. Another challenge that's tied into that is who will manage it. What if a tenant locks themselves out or something? Who's going to take care of it? And who's going to make sure that it's being looked after as it should be? But before you even get to that stage, how do you even know which areas are good to invest in? Like if you've lived in your local area for 10 years, you start to get a real sense for what the makeup of an area is like. There are lots of cities where it's not even as broad as this area of town is good, this area is bad. Often it's like road by road. Some roads you'd want to buy on, others that you wouldn't. How can you know that when it's not somewhere that you've had all that experience living in for all those years? And another challenge, I think, is that we talked about analysis paralysis as a problem for beginners, and it can make it worse if you don't have any constraints. If you're limited to investing within a half-hour drive of where you live, there are going to be a more limited number of choices to make about the area you'll buy within that half-hour radius. Where can you afford to buy? Where do you want to buy? There are going to be choices to be made, but not too many. Suddenly, if you've got the whole country to choose from, that massively multiplied the number of decisions you have to make. And so faced with all those decisions, you could end up doing nothing. So they are all the challenges. Most of the challenges really boil down to risk. There's the perception that you're taking more of a risk by investing away from where you live. And there are ways with the type of property you target of reducing that risk.
Absolutely. So before we go into how to actually go about investing, as Rob said, there's things you can do to lower your risk. So here's some of the things I always advise and, I do myself. So when you target property, you'll probably want to consider a property that falls into one of the three categories. The property is either new, it's nearly new, or it's been refurbished. Okay, so it's brand new from a developer, or it's nearly new, so it was built a few years ago, and it may still have its builder's guarantee, or it's been refurbished to a really good standard. The reason why is those type of properties present less risk. It's far less likely that things are going to go wrong with the property. If it's new, there's got a new boiler, everything in the property is new. Same if it's nearly new, and obviously refurbished as well. Make sure it's not just a lick of paint, make sure it's a full proper refurbishment. As I've said, new properties and nearly new properties will probably come with a builder's guarantee as well. So that protects you on a structural point of view. A massive reduction in risk by targeting those type of properties if you invest further afield. And something that I do is standard. Also, I wouldn't take on a refurbishment project if you're not local to the property. I know some people have done it, but that's a lot of stress. Doing a refurbishment product in your own street can be incredibly hard work and stressful. Doing a refurbishment project miles and miles away can really crank up the pressure and the stress. If that's your strategy, doing refurbishment projects, then this probably isn't for you. But if you want to just invest in property, don't invest a lot of time, want to set your portfolio up so it, doesn't eat into your day-to-day life, then investing away from home is probably something you can consider. Also, if you're going to do it, don't take on a property that's a bit run down. So it doesn't necessarily need refurbishing, but it's a bit tired. Because the opposite of the new and nearly new refurbished is things are more likely to go wrong. It could be damp issues, it could be wood rot, the boiler could go. I'm not saying it will happen, but you would just increase the risk. Things to consider when you're looking at property, the type of properties to go for.
You can reduce your risk by going after those types of property. So let's dive in now to how to actually do it. How do you invest at a distance? Well, the first step is to develop an investment thesis. You need to pick an area which you think is good value and has strong demand. So when you're looking at the demand, what you're really looking for is the fundamentals, which we talked about before in our episode on property hotspots. The fundamentals are things like transport, jobs, schools, and shops. If you've got all those things in place, you don't necessarily need to know an area inside out to know that if you've got those things in place, there's a very good chance that people are going to want to live there. The tenant demand is going to be strong. At this stage, you're just doing really broad brush stuff, just kind of looking at a map thinking, all right, well, which parts of the UK offer better value than where I live, especially if you're from the southeast? The answer to that is pretty much everywhere. And where is the demand going to be strong, looking for the fundamentals? And from there, you can move into a more detailed research process. And Rob, I know that you've got a process that you use at this stage.
When we put our research document together, the Big 50 report, we take 3 steps. Okay, so first of all, we use the internet. So when we're assessing an area or a deal, when you've done it for long enough, you tend to get to know areas pretty well anyway, but you still go through this process. So first, use the internet. Use websites like Rightmove. Look at comparables in the local areas. You can click on the radius and do a quarter of a mile, half a mile, so on. You can look at an area's credit score quite easily for free online as well. You can look at the previous selling prices on the land registry for free. There's plenty of websites out there. And in fact, listen out for our resource of the week because we've got another one for you. But that's where you start. The second is use the phone. As Rob's going to do later this week by calling letting agents, you can do that too. Call some letting agents in the area and say, how's the market? How are things going? What do you think I'll be able to get for this type of property? And also call estate agents. Ask similar types of questions. And you'll start to get a feel for it. And the second benefit is you start to get a feel for whether that agent's any good as well that you may use. Use the phone and start speaking to local agents to get the lowdown on what the market's doing. And then finally, you can do one or two things. You can walk the street yourself, something we always do as we put our research together, or you can get somebody to do that for you. So you may have a friend in the area who knows that area really well. Let's go through that again. First of all, use the internet. Second, use the phone. And third, in person, whether that's yourself or a good friend or somebody you trust. That's how we research any property investments that we're looking at.
And so when it comes down to walking the streets, there's going to be quite a lot you can do. If you want to, you can go and stay in a hotel for a few days and spend all day walking around and getting to know the area, seeing it at different times of day and everything else. But you're not going to be able to do that as much as you would if you were local. So at this point, you can start relying, as Rob hinted at, on other people. If there are local experts whose knowledge you can use, that's going to give you a lot of leverage and it's going to cut out a lot of work on your part and reduce your risk as well. So if you've got someone who you trust, who's got strong local knowledge, that can overcome a lot of problems. First of all, they can really guide you on what you should be buying in the first place. And then they can possibly help you to keep it on track as well and kind of give you all that kind of on the ground knowledge that you're going to miss out if you're far away. A good example of this was a guy called Mark Lloyd, who I interviewed on the Property Geek podcast. It was episode number 12, and I'll link to that in this episode's show notes as well. He lived in Surrey, and he had a bit of a portfolio there, but he wanted to build up his portfolio by buying properties that were better value than in his area. And he ended up looking in the northeast. And he went to the northeast a few times, but he couldn't be up there constantly, and he didn't want to be. So he made sure that he built a team of people locally who had really in-depth knowledge of the area, who he trusted, and he basically just followed their lead. If they said something was a good idea, then he would do his own research to verify what they were saying. And if they said something was a no-go, he'd pass on it. By using those experts, he managed to build up a sizable portfolio up there, eliminate most of his risk, because it's not like he was going in blind to these things, because he had the advice of these people he trusted, and he'd be able to be really successful. Those experts who you work with, they can be letting agents, They could be estate agents, or it could be a property company or a property sourcer that you trust. Those people can be invaluable before you buy, but they can also help you manage the property once you've bought it. Because really, the whole management question comes down to using a letting agent. You're not going to be able to pop round there at the drop of a hat if something needs doing, if you're at the other end of the country. But that's what letting agents are for. And we've talked already about how to make sure you find a good one, because a bad one can make you a lot more trouble than they're worth. But if you get a good one and you make sure that you ask them for regular inspections, then you can be reasonably sure that the property is going to be well looked after. If anything's going wrong, then you're going to know about it. And if the tenant needs to contact someone, they can call the agent and you won't have to go around there or get involved. So a tip is to make sure that the agent agrees to do quarterly inspections and provides photos for you as well. They can give you photos when they go around, and so you can look and you can have peace of mind that everything's okay. And if there is something which has been reported as an issue, you can see a photo of it to verify there's something that needs your attention. So you're leveraging the local knowledge that they've got that you can't have, and you're making sure that the management is all taken care of as well. And really, if you've got someone who you trust, and that's the key part, if you can trust them, then it doesn't really matter if you live locally or not, because you've got that body of knowledge that you can draw on and someone who can be looking after your interests.
Absolutely. And to build that trust with the experts, try your best to meet them. Because if you're going to have this working relationship with them, they might sound great on the phone, they might have a fantastic website, but when you sit down with them, look them in the eye, you're going to get a pretty quick reaction in your gut to say, yeah, this is the type of person I want to work with or not. You know, we talked about your gut instinct before, trust it. If you're going to build a relationship like that, and it's an important one, make sure you meet them. If you're working away from home, try not at least to work with a letting agent, estate agent, a property company if you haven't met them. I think it's important because, you know, you're not buying washing machines, you're investing in property, you're talking about big sums of money. In conclusion, investing away from home is not for everyone, but I think you'd be mad not to at least consider it, because if you don't, you're costing yourself money. That's a fact. You are. It's highly unlikely that you live in the best place to invest in the UK. It's highly unlikely. As it is unlikely, you need to start expanding your boundaries. Whether you do it bit by bit, you know, you go, okay, I'll look within a 50-mile radius, or, you know, you're open to this idea and you look across the UK. You know, you might need to do it in bit by bit stages. That's fine. But at the very least, if you don't consider it, you're definitely leaving money on the table.
I think it's considering it that's the key point from all this. It's the same as we talked earlier with houses and flats. You're doing yourself a disservice if you have a bias that causes you to miss out on a huge area of property investment. By all means, look at it, do the research and decide it's not for you. But if you just reject it outright, then you could be missing out on some big opportunities. So hopefully we've given you a good picture there of what the risks are, what kind of arguments people have got against investing at a distance, and ways of overcoming them. So we'll have all of that in the show notes if you want to refer back to it, but hopefully that's been useful. Moving on, the resource of the week, Rob, is a tool that can help you to do exactly what we've just talked about.
The tool of the week, I have to thank Martin Woodage. Thank you, Martin. He emailed me a few weeks ago and he said, guys, do you use this tool? And it's mouseprice.com. And I have to say, yes, it is something I've used in the past, but looking at the website again, they've really updated it and added a lot of features. So thank you, Martin, for suggesting this resource, which is mouseprice.com. And mouseprice.com is a great website to help you with that research. They've got the stuff you would expect, like the sold prices and valuations of a certain area, comparables for sale and for rent, like Rightmove would have as well. It's got some really good area guides, so have a look at that too. You know, you can dig into each area. So this is an ideal tool for this week after what we've been discussing. It's one of the things I really like, Rob, are the heat maps, that you can type in a postcode and you can have a look at the average values and the growth rates in that area, you know, the number of new builds, and there's so much more there too. So have a look at that. I think it was really good. And similar to Rightmove, they've got a property monitor feature. So you can say, if anything comes up in this certain area, please let me know about it. A really great tool, one that's really come on since I've used it. You know, I've been using some other tools recently, but it's definitely going to be back in the portfolio of resources I use to research property, because I think they've really upped the game.
Yeah, I've not looked at it for a long time either, and I'm just looking at it now. What's really interesting is it'll tell you about price reductions as well, which I normally use Property Bee for, which is a plugin we've talked about before. But it shows comparable properties and their asking prices as well. So it seems like they've got lots of analysis tools built in that they didn't have last time I looked. So if you are used to using other tools, it might be worth giving it another look, because it's certainly changed a lot over the last year or so. Yeah,
it doesn't have to replace what you use, just add it to your list. You know, the more stuff you can use to research, the better. So, Rob, we've had a lot of people joining the mailing list So they've been benefiting from our secret episode, but we just wanted to mention it again because we've noticed a big surge in listeners over the last few weeks, so they may not know about it.
Definitely. If you're not on the mailing list, there is no reason not to be. We're not going to bombard you anything. We're not going to try and sell you anything. All we do is we send you one email a week when each episode goes live to remind you that it's out every Thursday morning. And every so often we'll send you a little extra as well. And the first extra that you get as soon as you sign up is our secret episode where we go into some sneaky tips that we use and haven't talked about anywhere else. So if you do want to join the mailing list, thepropertypodcast.com is the place to do it. Just pop on there, put in your email address, and you'll get that secret episode straight away and lots more goodies to come.
We will never publish that episode. So make sure you get along to the mailing list and sign up because it will never go public. So it's only for our subscribers. Next week, we've got a really interesting topic, Rob, and we're going away from what we normally do.
Yeah, this is a big departure for us because we talk about buy-to-let the vast majority of the time. But next week, we're not even going to talk about buy-to-sell, which is the other main strategy. We're going to talk about not buying at all. We're going to talk about how you can profit from a housing boom without buying anything at all. Whether there will be a housing boom or not, who knows, but it's in the media all the time at the moment. Everyone seems convinced that housing is on the up. So if you want to get a part of that, but you don't want to do all this stuff that we've been talking about, it all sounds like too much effort for you, we're going to talk about 5 other ways that you can get a piece of the action. So that should be a really interesting episode.
At least we're balanced, Rob. They can't accuse us of being too biased, although we really are.
1 episode out of 29 about not doing buy-to-let. That's balance.
Yeah, that's our limit. Okay, well, thank you so much to everyone who's listening. I said at the top of the show, but thank you for making us the UK's favourite business podcast. That is incredible. We've loved the support you've given us, and we will do many, many more podcasts because of it. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.